I guess the biggest part is just like street smarts versus book smarts, right? And when it comes down to payroll, the old model's kind of dead now, right? If it's not on my payroll, it's not my problem. It is now. They're about to go live with one of our systems, and they're saying, hey, if we get this wrong, we're up for a lot of money, right? But at the moment, I would still say if you're dipping your toes into AI, make sure your instruction sets say, you come back to me, final call, no matter what. But I'm a skeptic, right? I'm still a skeptic. Don't sleepwalk into AI because it will start to do some things that you're not aware of and really pull up the murkiness into the periphery, and then you won't trust it, right? I can safely say I go to some people and they say, hey, where's my data? And I'm like, they don't know. There's a lot of hype. I would implore anybody viewing this to try to use a little bit of a critical analysis on all those LinkedIn posts that say, oh, you can just dump all this data into AI and hope for the best, right?
Work is changing. That's not a prediction anymore. It's just Tuesday. And the leaders doing it well aren't the ones with all the answers. They're the ones asking better questions. I'm Dave Kenyon, and this is Evolving Workforce. Today we're talking about what happens to workforce management when organisations grow fast and why the systems and processes that worked at 200 people start to crack at 2,000. My guest is Joe Collins, founder of Cobolt, a workforce technology consultancy specialising in multi-site operations, particularly in construction and industrial sectors, I should say. Joe has built his career without a traditional degree, learning from the ground up by solving real problems for real businesses. That gives him, a perspective that we don't often hear and makes him quite grounded and refreshingly direct. Joe, great to have you on Evolving Workforce.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's a real excitement to do this. There's a lot that I want to kind of really touch base on, and give 2 cents. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been looking forward to chatting to you. So first, let's talk about your career without that traditional degree.
Of course.
How have you learnt, and how has that shaped what you're doing right now in terms of the workforce stuff?
I guess the biggest part is just like street smarts versus book smarts, right? So I went out into the realm after, graduating high school straight into full-time work, right? It got me to have a look at different businesses, got me to look at how different industries ran, and I started to understand what made businesses flow from increasing revenue, decreasing expenditure, and managing that compliance and risk, right, from the get-go. I'm not saying that, go degreeless, but that was just kind of the way that I felt that I needed to go. Also, I didn't want to be labelled with a whole heap of debt too. So having that on-the-ground reality of how businesses work instead of just reading through books and syllabus and going through those particular exercises at a particular university, I got that type of experience hands-on, and I've always valued that, and I think a lot of people do value that when I get into those conversations with the C-suite or the management of the construction sector, as well as any other industrial sectors that I'm trying to serve as well. So.
We'll get onto the construction sector in a moment, but
of course.
I think when we're speaking off air, you mentioned that it just helps you with in certain self-reliance in terms of you've had to figure it out as you go, and you're self-taught.
Absolutely. So I taught myself programming, I've taught myself business acumen, I've taught myself a lot of how we're going to shape our administrative processes from automation to now into AI. I guess because I've just been by myself within those businesses and I've had mentors throughout those, it's really helped me shape on how to run that business. And that's why I'm now running Cobolt/Helixx, my new entity as well, and knowing where the pitfalls are. So when I'm conversing with those particular prospects, I know, hey, I've done this before. And I'm young enough to see where we can help you automate and optimize your tech stack there too, especially around workforce management.
So exciting. So in terms of your Helixx /Cobolt is now involved in, or it has always been involved in construction. Mm-hmm. What's the big shift been, say, from the last 5 to 10 years in those industries?
Look, compliance density, compliance management with different workforce management systems. You're not just managing your onshore people, but you're also managing your offshore people. You're managing your subcontractors. You're managing their subcontractors, especially if you're a head contractor in construction. We know that it's not just reliant on construction itself. I know that a lot of manufacturing and distribution centers are also offshoring their workforce as well. You know, you hear it in IT where you've got offshore IT support centers and you're managing their compliance. So I think the biggest change is how that compliance is to be managed internally, externally, up, down, sideways too. So that's a really big part. And when it comes down to payroll, the old model's kind of dead now, right? If it's not on my payroll, it's not my problem. It is now. So there's a big shift in making sure that whatever technology that you implement, that technology can also take in that compliance measure too. And they're the questions that I'm going to get into a little bit more in depth in the next following questions too.
Yeah, right? No worries. So construction runs on, and this section is like why it matters. Construction runs on subcontractors, multiple systems and dispersed teams. Why does that make workforce management so much riskier than most industries realise?
Yeah, look, it's around supply chain management of that workforce, right? So what happens when people are on leave? What happens when people are sick or anything of the such? What happens when there's things that are happening on the work site that you don't understand, or there are just those edge cases or error checking parts that you need to take in? And it's just, there's so many government regulations these days to adhere by, and there's quite a few different parts that make fun of this, but safety measures are written in blood, right? They're there, so you need to comply with them, and that's what makes managing this risk so, I guess, it becomes down to managing that risk. You need to do it in such a way that it might fall on your shoulders. And if you're doing this manually, it's going to take you a long time to do this, right? Managing your payroll, managing your compliance on workforce, it takes a lot of human capability to do that, where it's maybe not just an intern, maybe it's not just your standard payroll manager. You may need to get a full-fledged system of personnel to manage that. And that's why it's risky opening up these businesses. It's risky as you see some of the big top tier construction firms go insolvent because their margins are so low, because wages are so high to manage that risk, right? So when we're going through and implementing those systems, right, fragmented data, multiple systems spanning over subcontractor systems too, because they'll be using what they do. If that data's not being passed up the line, you don't know where it is. And that can hurt your business a lot, right? So we need systems that can integrate, that can loop through, that can make usability, UI, UX, right, really easy down to the lowest common denominator and all the way back up to the head contractor. And that's why it's really risky when implementing these particular systems and just getting something off the shelf and thinking it's going to work.
So when we're talking about systems, we're talking about time and attendance, rostering, demand planning.
Correct.
Payroll.
Payroll, of course, yes.
Payroll, of course, and payroll compliance.
There's learning and management in there as well. There's, we want to make sure people are certified and they're keeping their certifications up to date as well. That doesn't go for your side operations, but also your back office too, because these systems take a bit of time to learn too, right?
And where do these typically go wrong around payroll accuracy, awards, compliance specifically, if we dig into that side of it?
Yeah, look, there's two things that can really, really go wrong. It's, where I personally see, because I've been doing a lot of payroll implementations recently, more so, and I've stuck my head into some of the time and attendance as well, right? I've seen things that maybe the accruals or the entitlements or the allowances aren't being accrued correctly and somebody's getting underpaid. So really being stringent and strict on that EBA and award ruling needs to be up to scratch, right? It needs to be up to compliance, or you could be in hot water with the ATO, right? You don't want to be on the other side of the tax man, right?
No.
So, and on the other side of that would be, ensuring that super is correct. We've got payday super coming through. That's going to be affecting a lot of people from the ERP space that we implement too, as well. Some of the payroll solutions that we go through, not some, but all, right? So, on two sides of the coin, there's a really big part around making sure there is accurate timesheets going in, they're being calculated correctly, and they're also making sure that payroll can go out timely and smoothly. I have a customer at the moment, they miss one day in payroll, they have to pay all of their employees, I think, double time.
Wow.
So they're about to go live with one of our systems, and they're saying, hey, if we get this wrong, we're out for a lot of money, right? It affects the bottom line there. And they're a smallish company, but they still have the same compliance measures as a bigger company too, right? So when we're implementing these parts, these systems, from an ERP to financial to payroll to workforce management, whoever we might partner with, OI is doing a lot of really good things here with their EBA and the calculation rules with construction and the Modern Award. We're making sure that we're testing thoroughly on their side, on our side, internally, QA checks, the whole thing to manage that risk, to manage the data, to manage the accuracy of that data going in, coming out, paying those people on time effectively.
Nice one.
Yeah.
Now, it's a question for the ages. It's been around for a while. Best of breed versus jack of all trade. And what we're talking about here is the software, whether it's just one particular type of application rather than in terms of multiple different, like HRIS. Do you want to run us through what I mean by that?
Yeah, this is a really, really interesting one because myself as a technologist, I come from a system design perspective, whereas some people may critique that in a way from a business point of view, because from a system design perspective, having everything in one basket could mean that you have a single source of failure, right? There might be redundancies checks. You could load balance with different servers. From a tech perspective, you can make sure that is, ensured that that particular system stays online, but you're coming down to that all-in-one system that is a single source of failure. Whereas if you flip it to multiple different systems doing each of their own parts in unison or in tandem, consecutively on a workflow, think of it like microservices in a way. There's multiple points of failure, but if one service goes down, we can work on that while the others stay online, right? Flip it on its head. If I talk to a business owner, they say, hey, I want everything in one system. It's easy for me to train all my people. It's easy for change management. It's easy for me to manage my subscription. It's easy for me from license, one throat to choke. I go to that vendor and that's it, right? So, but you may not get everything that you want. Jack of all trades, but master of none. I sell software, MYB Acumatica. There's a few other different ERPs such as Sage Intacct, Microsoft PC, which will tote all-in-one systems with add-ons and so forth, right? But they want everything under one belt. And whilst that's a really good measure, even some of those parts with payroll fall short on some of the EBAs and awards. Some people don't like the mobile app and all that. So we go to best in breed solutions out there in the market that can actually handle all of the edge cases and then making sure that they can integrate their data through to the ERP. And again, there's no fault on these particular systems all in one versus best in breed point solutions. It's how you integrate that data. It's how you have that transactional layer. And then we'll get through to all the cool things like AI once you've got that foundation.
Sounds very good. Tell me what industries, what can other industries learn from construction about managing people they can't always see? They're not always visible.
Yeah, this is interesting, right? So construction's been like this since, I guess, I'd say dawn of time, before probably my time, right? I'm quite young, youthful in a way. But as we see, construction has so many different layers. You have your head contractor, your subbies, your subby of subbies, and your subbies, right? You keep all going all the way down. Again, I've talked about managing that risk, that compliance, all the way up the chain, all the way down. And you've got a lot of different apps that do that inside the construction sphere of IT. You go to Sydney Build, you go to Future Build, which is just on at the ICC at the moment. You'll see all these different apps working in tandem, making sure they're integrated to handle that extensive workforce that goes from multiple parties. Now, when we take that to a manufacturing house or a distribution center or an e-commerce platform or even an IT SaaS house as well, they may not have that particular experience offshoring and managing that risk where they can't see. So it's good to go to these types of media, these podcasts, and listen to how construction are doing these things so you can also potentially replicate that system, right? And there's a method to the madness. If construction is still a little bit slower on the uptake because of this, but once they've got this, I think, sorted in the next 5 years, it's galloping now, right? Compared to 5 years ago, they'll have this really tight-knit system of a really few key apps that a lot of other apps will integrate to. Your Procores, your breadcrumbs, and so forth. So it's really imploring that anybody who's outside construction to heed a construction manager or quantity surveyor or the C-suite of a construction company and ask them, how are you managing that workforce today? Is it easy? Is it hard? What are the problems? It's just getting that conversation started. And just to tack on that, I go to a few construction companies who are now also manufacturing as well. So they're doing the inverse. They're going to their friends, they're going to other key, stakeholders of big manufacturing plants and saying, how do I get into this part where I start manufacturing, my steel to go onto my warehouse, right? And we're in talks with some really big shops down in Melbourne at the moment, some in Queensland as well. Data centers are going through the roof, so we really want to target that, of course.
Yes.
Right? And again, it's just exploring different. I think a lot of industries are exploring sub-industries to go into to have that vertical integration there too. So it's really interesting. I would implore to start to get those conversations happening, start to go to meet and greet, start to look at other different media such as other podcasts, maybe also go to this one, right? Throw everything around this and have that chat around how they're managing that workforce.
I appreciate it, Joe. You're promoting this podcast while you're talking on this podcast, Evolving Workforce.
Of course.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So now we've got 3 quick games we like to play at the end of the podcast. And the first one's called AI versus humans. So in terms of payroll and workforce management data, where's the line in terms of how much you use AI and how much humans need to get involved?
Yeah, this is a really, really big one. It comes back down to how much you trust AI, right? There's a lot of hype. I would implore anybody viewing this to try to use a little bit of a critical analysis on all those LinkedIn posts that say, oh, you can just dump all this data into AI and hope for the best, right? It will pump out exactly what it does, where, I download some of those templates back in when I just playing around and half of them don't work, right? So I think AI is really, really, really good at sifting through data sets, right? You have to give it some instructions. You have to make sure that it's staying on. You have guardrails around it. You've got your MD files and all that, making sure it stays in that line. But from a judgment and relationship perspective, it has to come back to the human there, right? I employ many different agents over many different systems, from project management through to sales, through to marketing, through to just general admin of my Outlook email, right? Data going in, data going out. I always want it to come back to me to ask the judgmental questions. Hey, is this the correct thing? Yeah, that might slow me down a bit, but it's still gone through a lot of the data for me and group that data together based on commonalities, maybe like a category, or maybe by the subject name or the sender for Outlook email perspective. So I still wanted to come back to me for me to make that final judgment call. There are some things, once you start to trust it a little bit more, that you could probably offshore that to another agent. But at the moment, I would still say if you're dipping your toes into AI, make sure your instruction sets say you come back to me, final call, no matter what. You don't want it going into the wrong bucket. And this is where it comes into private versus public AI models too. I don't know if your follow-up questions are around that, but I'm happy to answer those too, right?
No, it was my follow-up question was more of a comment around always keep that human in the loop, and
Absolutely.
that's that fine point to, well, we can hand over a certain amount, but you need someone, and maybe multiple stages in the process. So I'm talking about a time and attendance, rostering to right through to payroll and payroll compliance. Maybe there needs to be a number of different humans in the loop there.
Take a time and attendance system, right? It's really great at going through a multitude. Say you have 5 different employees and one's taking a lot more sick leave than usual, but you're not picking up on that trend. It can do that data analysis very easily, but I wouldn't want it to schedule that employee to when they're not sick. So I want that to come back to me to make that judgment call. Yeah. But I want it to give me the report because it can go through the data a lot more easily and tell me this person's been sick on this day for this reason, right? And it might be every Monday because they've had a blowout on the weekend. Who knows, right? And no judgment there, but maybe you should say, hey, I can't work Mondays and I'll work Saturdays instead. But that's what I'm saying in terms of it combing through the data. It's pretty fast. It's going to be faster than me and you.
Absolutely.
Right? But I'm going to make that judgment call whether I go reschedule that person. I don't want it to go redo that. I don't want it to do that on its by itself.
Absolutely. You've got to let that person have their Saturday night.
I know, right?
Yeah. And maybe that's a great idea for everyone that just likes to have their Monday off. They can work Tuesday to Saturday.
Look, and things will be picked up during these systems. That's kind of why we implement these, to have making sure that people do the right work at the right time and they get paid for it. If things don't, I work a very flexible job. So, I get to take time off, do things like this with you, but when crunch time happens, I can say, okay, this is my focus time. AI makes sure that I have these focus periods of time in my calendar so I can do this work. And they'll say, I've scheduled into this. Is this okay, Joe? And I say, yeah, it is. Right.
Nice one. And next game is change your mind. So when we were talking off air before, you mentioned Salesforce regretting cutting thousands of people because AI couldn't fill the gap. Has anything shifted in your thinking about how fast AI can replace people in terms of workforce?
Look, going back 12 months, I really like the pace. I was kind of scared of the pace of AI, like everybody, but I like the trajectory of it. I was involved in a lot of AI, but not to the part that I am now, right? I was only scratching the surface or even understanding AI agents at the first part when Cobolt / Helixx was forming in that sense. Looking at these big players, right? Lay off so many employees in the midst of we're going to implement AI through our firm. I didn't really think that would be, I personally was a bit hurt around that because, I think AI is a great tool and it can really shift these people into new parts, but I understand from a headcount perspective, if they want to, reduce and minimize that cost, right? So, I can safely say 12 months later now, the pace is still quickening, but my judgment and my understanding of it has become vastly more deeper, right? Where I wouldn't trust it to make those judgment calls, coming back to that previous question's answer, right? I don't think it's there at the moment to make those judgment calls because of the relationships people have inside their team. And it can't replicate those relationships, those interpersonalities between one human and another human because it can't do that. It can't inherently understand and memorize that personality yet. The context window is just too short, right? And no matter how much database you give it, it still won't get it right? There's so many nuances that myself to you, we know, we can understand the bodily language. You can understand my little ticks and inflections of my voice versus you have to train AI to understand that, and it's just not there yet. So when these big firms say, hey, we've gotten rid of this, and then 6 months down the track, some of the senior managers say, we kind of regret it. I understand, right? I'm employing these AI agents in my own firm, but I don't trust them outside a human. When I need to have payroll expertise, I still ring up my consultants. When I need to get construction expertise, I ring up a construction consultants and talk to them, right? I'd rather be talking to a human still than an AI agent. And I think that's why those agents that you talk to on the phone have kind of, they don't hit the mark just yet.
They really don't do
Yeah, and I got a few calls the other day and I'm like, nah, I'm not going to actually answer.
No, that's not for me, yeah.
It's not for me too, right?
So you were talking about the human nuances and just how much there is really to being human. Do you think at one point, actually this leads into our next game, which is a prediction and a warning.
Yeah, sure.
Can you, I've got two, I'll ask for two predictions, but
sure.
Do you think AI will get to a point where it's like, wow, that is doing everything a human can do? It's almost like that might even be the singularity. I'm not sure if that's right.
Yeah, I understand that. I think I've been looking at a lot of different, technologists in the sphere, the grandfathers of AI. You can find this on YouTube and all that. I'll give you some links after you can place up. But, there's a lot of different predictions that are coming through this. Even Sam Altman of OpenAI saying, "Oh, just give me some extra money now." And we're so close to artificial general intelligence, right? We're so close, but I'm a skeptic, right? I'm still a skeptic. I love it and I think it's really good, and I might not be the most early adopter of everything these days as I might go through my career, but I still want to be somewhat on the bleeding edge. But I really don't think at the moment the standpoint is that it can truly replace a human. And it comes back to context windows, the resources, the hardware resources on hand. And I know data centers are being built. I know NVIDIA's going up in market cap. I understand that people putting so much money into GPUs and everything that Apple Silicon's actually doing with their chips. I really think it's going to cost humanity a lot more than it thinks to create something that can truly replace a human right now, right? Maybe something in the future, maybe something with quantum computing, maybe something that takes down that heavy lifting in terms of resource management, hardware resource management for these AI models. But right now, I think in the next 5-10 years even, I'm about to say 5 years, we're okay with the current trajectory. I'm okay with the current trajectory, but who's to say that I'm actually right? There's a lot of people betting their horse on, the inverse of what I'm saying.
It would be very, very interesting. So in terms of one more prediction, where is workforce technology and compliance going? Particularly in terms of, the industry that you're in. If you look ahead 5 years, are we going to be using applications or is it just going to be AI that we've built ourselves?
Yeah, look, two sides of the coin. Do you believe in making your own application, right? I see on LinkedIn that somebody made a HubSpot CRM off the back of Claude Code.
Wow.
Really, really cool, but it didn't pass their IT cybersecurity measures, right? They said, oh, no, it's got everything in it. I said, no, we've got our senior devs looking at this. It doesn't work the way you want it, right? We can't pass this, so we're going to go back to our SaaS vendor, which is HubSpot.
Yep.
Right? Because they've got all the certifications. They've all the compliance measures. I think from people making their own applications, yes, that's always happening. AI is just a tool to make it happen a little bit faster, if not a lot faster. But in terms of workforce management, I just because of the heavy regulated parts from government agencies, the stringent compliance measures that you need in there, the amount of personal identification information in there, you'll still need the big players that are out there, like OHI is actually making sure that they're doing. I wouldn't trust somebody just coming off the cuff and saying, hey, I built my own workforce management system and you can go dump all this into, this AWS bucket. Is that actually secure? Did you put SSL on there? Did you encrypt it? Did you encrypt data transit? I don't trust that, right? So I want to make sure that I'm getting a system best in breed that's done all the heavy lifting, that's done all the regulatory measures, and making sure that, they've gone through all of those checks and balances before implementing it. And that's when I would be imploring CFOs, CEOs to actually ask those validation questions when they're looking at new software, because, you're going to be paying money for this, and you want to make sure that people are innovating and staying up the check, right? So I do think people will still be making their own apps and all that, but the workforce itself will come down to a few key players innovating with AI to build on top of their current platform still in the near future, for sure.
And for now, for a warning, what's one thing that organisations are sleepwalking into right now?
Look, I have proposals out there for AI advisory. I have proposals out for AI frameworks, small-time agents. The big thing is data sanitization, data quality. You can't loop over bad data. And I don't think they're sleepwalking. They're starting to wake up to that fact, but they're not looking at the entire big picture of their own organization sometimes. I'm like, do you remember Betty from accounts? They're just putting everything into a local file and held all of your data there. I've had some consultants save all of their data in their personal OneDrive folders too. And I'm like, hey, we're not compliant if you do that, right? So it's making sure that I have those measures in place to control where data flows when it comes into my system. And my data security and data retention policies say that on my website too, right? So I don't want people sleepwalking on data quality and data retention. I don't. There's so many things that you can get audited on and you can get sued upon, and there can be legal matters, and that just costs your business a lot of time and effort to go through. So I just want to make sure that I'm getting this point across, is just sanitize that data, make sure you know where it's coming from. You can't take the next step into optimizing your tech stack into AI Foundry or parts of what you want with AI until that layer's done, right? So you can't run before you walk, unfortunately. So, talk to us, talk to your providers. I'm free for a call anytime, right? I'll offer you a free 1 hour discovery. Here's me, selling through your podcast. But, just have a look at your measures, audit your own data. Don't sleepwalk into AI, because it will start to do some things that you're not aware of and really pull up the murkiness into the periphery, and then you won't trust it, right? And I have business owners not trusting AI now, which is unfortunate, right?
So this has been a fascinating chat, Joe. Is there something that you'd like to share that business leaders really need to know about, workforce management and compliance?
Yeah, look, it comes down to, I guess, those compliant measures. Don't get something off the shelf if you haven't vetted it. It's pretty simple out of that part. I would be asking more from your current vendors as well. Go into, their customer success managers will be hopefully trying to ping you. Get on the phone, have that 1 hour meeting, that 30-minute chat. Go meet with them for lunch and say, what are you innovating with? If you're not innovating, then why am I paying you money, right? Everything's on a subscription. You should be getting bang for buck, right? And again, it might be all the glossy, we're implementing AI through our system. It's going to be really good, but be really peculiar on how that AI is implemented. Be really stringent and ask those hard questions. If I put data here, where does it go to, right? I'm putting all my subcontractor data in here too. Where is that going to? Have I notified my subbies of subbies and all that down the chain if you're in construction? Important to have those conversations with your vendors, right? You can always quiz me on my tech stack that I put in, right? I make sure that I'm always security conscious of that data going in, the data going out, especially when it's workforce, especially when it's payroll, right? You want to have data sovereignty. You want to make sure it's all hosted in Australia. I implore that if you're going out to market and having a look at ERPs, accounting systems, back office systems, there's so much data in those, right? And you got to know where it's going to lie, right? Back in the day, you had filing cabinets, and you knew that was on premise, right? So
you had it all there, didn't you?
Had it all there. And then we shifted to on-premise service, and now we're in the cloud. And I can safely say, I go to some people and they say, "Hey, where's my data?" And I'm like, they don't know, right? So, yeah, I make sure that you know where it is. You know your audits, you know what you're complying with, whether those systems are complying. They've got hot fixes in for the new government regulatory parts that are coming through, like Payday Super for payroll. And make sure that they're up to date with their validations and checks there.
Joe, this has been absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate you coming in and having a chat to us on Evolving Workforce and playing my silly games.
I know, I liked them very much. Sorry.
I think we had fun.
It's been really, really good. It's been really, really good. I wish I had some more questions for yourself. Maybe I can come on when you do. Maybe I can come on when you. Yeah, my next thing would be doing this construction finance part, right? So, but that's in the making.
All right.
Yeah.
Watch this space.
Watch this space. Exactly.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Bye.
Thanks, Dave. Cheers.
Evolving Workforce was proudly brought to you by OHI, specialists in workforce management, award interpretation and payroll compliance, delivering new certainty. This podcast was recorded on the land of the Gadigal people. If you enjoyed this podcast, why not send to a friend or a colleague? And remember to hit follow on your podcast player to get every episode as they drop every Wednesday. Thanks for listening. I've been Dave Kenyon, and this is Evolving Workforce.